Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout as we look ahead to the Fantasy Premier League 2023-24 season. My name is Joe and here we will focus on player positions, which midfielders will become forwards, which defenders may move into midfield and so on. Joining me to see who is on the move potentially is Fantasy Football Scout editor Neale. Welcome, Neale. How are you?
All right, Joe. Yeah, enjoying the break, I have to say.
Yeah.
I feel like me. FPL
break,
fatigue towards the end of.
You say break, but you're working.
That's true.
There's no break for you.
It's a different kind of work, to be honest. It's the pressure's off. You get to do more longer reads. You know, like I'm doing the Burnley research for the promoted side, and you take long on these articles, and with it, there's a bit more. I think detail comes out because you're less pressurized to get these articles turned around. And actually, my favorite time of the season for writing because you get to explore. Sort of different subject matters as well, you know, like bonus points and home advantage and things like that. It's a lot more little nuances and avenues you can take beyond the weekly scout picks and differentials and things like that. So quite nice.
I suppose for our own research as humble managers in the game. Also, we get whenever the game launches at some point later this month, maybe in June or July, we get a good month or so to prepare for game week 1 and prepare all the potential mistakes we might make. But one of the changes is that each year positions do change as well. So to timestamp this, it's mid-June. The game has not launched yet, but we're going to have a look at the sort of potential position changes and also those that people are talking about that actually might actually be a bit unlikely. As ever, do remember to press that like button if you're enjoying this content, and do remember to subscribe as well so you can keep up to date with all our latest videos and podcasts. So first of all, really, I mean, there's some hard and fast rules with FPL, aren't they, with player classification? So, you know, certain defenders are definitely defenders and certain midfielders are definitely midfielders in the game. So yeah, what is that classification then? So yeah, I mean, we'll start with defenders. Who are defenders?
Yeah, so it's we get this debate every year about whether Salah should be a forward, but it's mostly to do with team sheet position. So where you are on the team sheet. So for defenders, it's pretty simple, really. It's centre backs, full backs, and wing backs as well. So you might say, for example, Pedro Porro and Perisic were very much advanced wing backs last season at Spurs, but they were wing backs on the team sheet, so they are classed as defenders. So that's fairly straightforward. I think the thorny subject matter becomes when it's midfielders and forwards. And do you want me just to segue straight on the midfielders?
Yeah, just keep going. Yeah, just keep going. I'm just listening away.
So I mean, central defensive midfielders, that's pretty straightforward. So you Kantes before you move to Saudi Arabia, of course. So that's fairly obvious. Number 10s as well. So in a 4-2-3-1, or two number 10s as you get these days in sort of 3-4-2-1 formations. Wingers and wide midfielders. So there's your Salah, your Salah and your Sons. So even though their attacking stats are much superior to half the forwards in the game, maybe most of the forwards in the game, they are on the flank on the team sheet, and that's traditionally what FPL takes into account. It's not where you end up. It's not heat maps. It's anything like that. It's your position on a team sheet.
Rightio. Okay, so for example, but what would happen? Say, for example, this happens sometimes with Salah. 2 out of 38 games, he's actually the central striker. Match. So do they take that into account?
They take some starts into account, but it'd have to be more significant than that. Okay. So it tends to be, in my experience, I've been doing sort of 5 years writing articles on this, tends to be a majority. So if you say started 22 matches as a forward and 14 as a winger, chances are you're going to be classed as a forward next season. Sometimes if it's a split, they'll just stick with what they've got. You know, if there's any kind of uncertainty, they won't change for the sake of it. Forwards, as you'd expect, lone strikers, strikers who play in a 2-man attack. So if a team plays 4-4-2, for example, then both of those will be forwards, and the central striker in a 3-man front line as well. So, you know, in Liverpool's case, that would be Gakpo, Firmino, whereas your Salahs and your Luis Diaz's would be midfielders.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, imagine that Liverpool are going to be quite key to this because there has been some
Yeah.
position changes, particularly towards the end of the season. I know we'll speak about Trent Alexander-Arnold later, but he's of course moved to a midfield role for country and club, and as well with Liverpool forwards. So many are forwards, but then they're playing out on the wing or as number 10s,
Yeah.
and then and so on, and with the midfielders up front. So I mean that's probably a good place to start, isn't it? Really, because
Yeah.
Liverpool's probably where most of this sort of player reclassification action is going to happen. So let's have a look at Jota and Gakpo. Okay, Jota is a
Yeah.
forward, but he's not. He's been a midfielder according to this, and Gakpo is a midfielder in the game, or was. But he's, as you said, he's playing in the central role, the Firmino role. Yeah. So how likely is it that they're going to change?
I think very likely. I think this is the likeliest, certainly the likeliest high-profile change that we're going to see. I mentioned Gakpo there in my introduction as a forward. Of course, as you said there, Joe, he's not at the moment.
No.
Because he entered the game as a midfielder in January upon his move. But as you say there, these are the two players that I'll bet my house on it, these two changing. Gakpo, I think he's made 17 league starts in total. All but 2 of them have come as the centre forward, if you can call it that. Of course, they do drop deep, they drop wide, but on the team sheet, he's the middle figure. So I'd be absolutely astonished if he didn't move into a forward. And similarly with Jota as well, who has played certainly in the past for Liverpool and for Wolves. But this season, he has been mostly used on that left. So yes, injury affected his campaign. I think he only made 12 starts this season, I believe, because of those layoffs. But only 2 of them did he start as that central striker, where Gakpo has ended up and where Firmino was beforehand. So he's been job sharing of sorts with Luis Diaz in the running. We'll see how that manifests itself next season. Maybe Jota will play more of a central role. But if we're basing it on last season, and that tends to be what FPL do, the season just gone, not forecasting ahead, not looking 2 seasons back, the season just gone, then Gakpo forward and Jota midfielder.
Okay, so in terms of Diaz and Salah, they just will remain as they are. Midfielders, they are what they are. They play on the wing as well. Darwin Núñez, no, he's a tricky one. He is a forward in the game at the moment. He has played as that central role, but then Gakpo came in, and I haven't really seen him since play there. He's mainly played on the left, if at all. So surely he would move, wouldn't he?
Well, Klopp said this himself. He doesn't quite know how to get the best out of Darwin yet. He's not sure whether he fits that sort of selfless role as Gakpo and Firmino are doing. He's more of a goal getter, and has he got that ethic, that work ethic to play on the flank? As you know, Klopp likes the high press and things like that. So I think they're still figuring this out themselves. I still think he will be a forward.
Okay.
Almost twice as many of his appearances were through the middle. Right. And yes, it did seem like he was playing on that left quite a bit towards the running. I think Klopp belatedly gave him another run in the game in the side as a central striker towards the end of the season. But they're looking at a sort of 2/3, 1/3 split in terms of starts.
Okay.
Most of them coming centrally. That includes substitute appearances as well. So I would think he retains his forward status for next season.
Okay, so a lot going on at Liverpool there, and we haven't even spoken about Alexander-Arnold yet. We will do a bit later. Let's move on to another forward or midfielder, which depending on which side of the Rashford fence you sit on. Marcus Rashford plays on the wing mainly, but he has played up front. But also for England, just this week, he dazzled on the wing again, not up front. Obviously, Kane has got that central striker role for England, but for Manchester United, he is a midfielder. Could he change into a forward, or will they keep him in that sort of, that Salah definition? He mainly plays on the wing.
Yeah, I think they will. I before I started researching this piece for the site, I thought he would maybe be more likely than he actually is to change. I didn't know the balance of appearances until I researched it. And actually, he spent a lot of the season on that left. It's because of Martial being injured and then Ronaldo leaving and Weghorst. I need to even finish that sentence. It did seem like Rashford was the main goal threat for much of the season, and he was their top goal scorer. He broke the double century for FPL points as well. But actually, looking deeper into it, only 15 of his 35 appearances were
Okay.
starting through the middle. Of course, during the game, he might end up up top if Martial's withdrawn, and then maybe Sancho was thrown on, or Garnacho or someone like that, and Rashford moves centrally. But it tends to be starting positions for FPL, and he has got a majority of appearances on the left wing. So again, I think he will stay the same, like Darwin. Particularly as, I mean, they don't. I don't think they consider this, but I'm sure Man United will move for a forward this summer. I'm sure they'll have to sign a striker,
Yeah.
even if it's not Harry Kane. So
Yeah.
I think you're going to see Rashford playing the most of
Okay.
his appearances on the left flank anyway next season.
Rightio. So, I mean, obviously he's going to get a price hike. We spoke about potential price
Yeah.
rises
Oh yeah.
yesterday on the video, and I know there's an article on that and a competition as well ahead of that. More details on the YouTube channel, our YouTube channel about that. But nevertheless, it is good that he's going to be a midfielder because midfielders get more points for
Exactly.
goals, and if you're a goal scorer on the wing, like Salah is, for example, if they're still a midfielder, that's fantastic. So that could be good news. It could be good news. Probably less popular as an FPL option. Brennan Johnson. He's been sort of in and out the side for Nottingham Forest, but they did feel a bit more settled towards the end of the season. I mean, they signed famously, a bit like Chelsea signed like almost everyone, but sort of an 11 has sort of emerged. But Brennan Johnson, he started as a forward in terms of FPL classification, but he's not really a forward, and he hasn't got that central striker role at Nottingham Forest, has he?
No, and I remember Mark Southerns, formerly of this Shire, saying last summer when Forrest came
Yeah.
up that he was a wide forward, even when he's starting
Right.
as one of the two strikers. He's like so far drifting to the
Right.
flank that he was ostensibly almost like a Salah type of touch mark. Um, yeah, he started up front this season. Cooper was playing that formation he used in the championship, so that was like a 3-4-1-2. So Johnson was, in a front pairing with another striker. But those tactics did evolve as the season progressed. So we saw a 4-3-3 used for a while, and
Yeah.
Johnson was out on the flank of that. And then latterly, towards the end of the season, especially in tougher games, then we had a slight tweak of the wing back system in that he had two attacking midfielders supporting the one central striker, and that one central striker was Taiwo Awani as well. So, yeah, it's looking at it on Transfer Market, which is a good resource if you're not aware of it. Then there's roughly an even split
Okay.
between him playing as an attacking midfielder or a winger in those two formations I've just mentioned, or as a part of a front two
Right.
or a lone striker.
Okay.
So yeah, it's 50-50 this one, I think. I
Okay.
would reclassify him as a midfielder because of his because I would play extra weighting on what happened at the end of the season. You know, like in the second half of the campaign, he's mostly playing as that, and you would think that formation would continue next season. So it's as I say, it's probably 50-50, but I would personally, I would reclassify him.
There is an article on Fantasy Football Scout by yourself about this, and I was just looking through that, and it mentions Brendan Johnson in there. It's worth looking at because it's got some heat maps in there. But I mean, looking at his heat map, I mean, he's very much on the wing. Obviously,
Yeah,
there are some central performances in there, but it would be, I would say, possibly remiss of FPL to look at a heat map like that, to look at his position, to look at his starting position each match, and to consider him a forward. He does seem like a midfielder. Yeah, one to consider perhaps when Nottingham Forest's fixtures get better. Brentford's fixtures are pretty good to start off with. No Tony, because he's got a several month ban for betting issues. But that does present some interest in some of their other players, particularly Brian and Bomo. Now, he's down as a forward in the game in
yeah.
2023. But he, like Brendan Johnson, like Salah, he's on the wing, really. He's not really playing that central role. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So he was reclassified last summer. He was a midfielder in his first season. and then was reclassified as a forward.
Yeah.
I think they might switch him back. They should switch him back,
Yeah.
really, if they're being consistent with the criteria. So last season, if you remember, sorry, I'm talking about 21-22 here.
Yeah.
Thomas Frank used a 3-5-2 for much of the season. So it was the wing back system, and it was up front, Tony and Mbumu. So that's, and they were right to recategorize him as a forward. However, they have been playing more in a 4-3-3 this season.
Okay.
And in that, Mbumu plays as a winger. So even when Tony was suspended, as he will be for quite some time, then it was Wissa playing as the middle figure. So Mbumo's always been on the flank of a 4-3-3. Yes, when they do play that wing back system and they reserve that for the big six traditionally, then he plays in a 2 up front. But the breakdown when he starts, 22 starts as a winger and 14 as a central striker. So really, if they're being consistent, then he should be moving back to a midfielder, and that would be great because extra point for goal, extra point for clean sheet. Yes, that's offset slightly by the bonus points rewarding forwards more, but it doesn't make up for it. You always get more as a midfielder for goals and clean sheets. By the way, when these players do get reclassified, I will go through and work out what they would have got last season. That'll be an article on the site.
Yeah.
See how many points they would have benefited from. But
that would be really handy.
Yeah, that was. I think Mbumu. I mean, what did he get? He roughly double figures. Was it 20 attack and return, something like that? Maybe 10ish goals, and then quite a few clean sheets as well. So maybe he would have been about maybe 15 points better off. He was already riding quite high in the forwards list, so I think he might have been top 10 midfielders as well. So, given that he's going to be possibly on penalties as well next season, because certainly for the first half of the campaign when Tony's suspended. And his attacking numbers without Tony are absolutely insane. I mean, I'll have it written down somewhere, but he's scoring like a goal a game without Tony since Brentford came up to the Premier League.
Wow.
Part of that is penalties, of course, but and Brentford's fixtures are very good for the opening third of the campaign or quarter. I suspect he's going to be in a lot of Gameweek 1 drafts.
So I mean, given
especially if he's reclassified.
Yeah. So I mean, given the likely price rises for the likes of Rashford and the Arsenal midfielders and Haaland, etc., I suspect his price might go up a little, or it might stay the same. But he's going to be a value player. I can see I can smell template every time I look at a picture of him.
Yeah.
It just looks. I can just see him. He's going to be in a number of teams. I suspect his ownerships could be somewhere around the 25-30% mark, as Tony's was. And myself included, definitely a player that I've highlighted. Wissa from being reclassified, could be reclassified perhaps, because he's a midfielder at the moment, isn't he?
He is. It could be a Jota Gakpo situation where you get one going one way and then the other going the other way. So he was, as I say, that's whenever Tony was out, Wissa deputised through the middle. So it was Mbumu and Sharda either side, or Lewis Potter, and then Wissa through the middle. However, I think over the course of the campaign, he has still played more on the flank of a 4-3-3.
Okay.
So if they are still focusing on total appearances and then the split, then he should still remain as a midfielder. But it depends how forward looking they are.
I guess if Tony's out until, I can't remember when he's due back, January, February, you would imagine that Wissa would be a forward until that time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, in either formation they play, he would be the central striker. This is with the disclaimer that they don't sign anybody else.
Yeah,
which they might do. They could make a loan signing or something till January to see them through. They are still a bit short. I mean, they've got that front three I just mentioned and Lewis Potter come back, but apart from that, they haven't got much waiting in the wings. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did bolster their front line.
So it's quite tough. I mean, it's quite tough for FPL actually with these position changes, because they've got their hard and fast rules as we described at the beginning, but then you've got to assess where they might play because someone's suspended or if someone gets injured, for example. And of course, that's going to change from whenever the game launches to whenever the actual matches start in August. and then people say, "Oh, you've got that wrong. He's clearly a midfielder and a forward." But I guess at that stage in July, they might have been. But it's quite hard to second guess, and this in Brentford's in particular case because they're with Tony out. That's it. It's going to have to change, and you're going to have to sort of guess where they're mostly going to play. It's quite a tough job.
Yeah, they traditionally haven't done that. I mean, they've tended to just look in the past or in the last 12 months as to what happens and tended not to be forward thinking.
Okay.
I can't think of many examples where it's been this obvious where someone's going to, change positions from where they played last season.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do because if they are using the old criteria, then he stays as a midfielder. But maybe they will make the odd exception.
And of course, just before we go on to some of the others as well that could possibly change, it'd be remiss of me not to mention John Lundstrom here because he was. I mean, I've been playing for 14, 15 years, and still he's the only one where they actually got it wrong. I mean, that's pretty impressive, isn't it? Over 15 years or so.
Yeah, I remember back in the day, I sort of made noise where there was some high-profile gaffes. I'm sure Andy Carroll came in as a defender when he was an academy player. He was just on our bench like one day. He was like 17 or something, and they listed him as a defender. But since then, they have got more professional about it. Yes, there might be a few, grey areas, disputed territories, midfielder, forward. But I mean, shocking ones like that, Lundstrom. I can't think of a more like blatantly wrong classification than that because he had never ever played as a defender ever.
No.
And I don't know where they got that from.
No.
So I mean, it served for a great story, but I think the as much as that brought interest in the game, I think they like to avoid accusations of amateurism.
Yeah, no, that was. I think that's actually impressive that they only one high profile one in all of those years, considering all of the players they have each year. And I think it was also, there's also an element of dumb luck about it in that John Lundstrom happened to be amazing and score loads of goals.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
it was, he could have gone totally under the radar there. He could have just been a defensive midfielder, not scored, not assisted, nothing like that. But anyway, impressive. I also say that because I actually hope they get it wrong again. At least I hope they find another John Lundstrom, and then even if it's deliberate, just to help me out, would be good. Let's have a look at some of the rest of the players. So, who else will change? I mean, I've got pictures of Alexander-Arnold and Richarlison on, so we'll come to them in that. But Brighton. We'll start with them. Brighton are interesting. And Ciso was down as a forward. But I mean, wasn't quite clear where he would play. But I did get the sense that he's not the central striker. He doesn't really play in that front two. He might play up there at certain periods of the game. But he seems to be more of a wing guy. He seems to be more of a sort of a number 10, an attacking role, but not the central striker. So do you think he might change back to a midfielder?
I think so. Again, this is one I picked out for the article, and I think based on last season's appearance stats, then he should be. Depends how deep, if they look as deeply as I do into these into the appearances. So it's maybe not immediately obvious if you didn't follow Brighton or if you weren't, writing articles such as these. But he played pretty much everywhere, didn't he? He was both flanks, number 10.
Yeah.
Yes, he did start, I think, 1 or 2 games. I think it was his first game. Against Forest that he started, he was central forward that time. But I think that was his only one, just only start up top, and it was mostly Ferguson and Welbeck.
Yeah,
occasionally Undav will play there as well. But he's mostly been relief for Matoma, March, and then McAllister, who of course is now gone, so he may get more of a chance. In that whole next season. I think he should. He should. 7 starts, I think it was in the final 9 games. Only one of them was as a central striker. So based on that,
I'm gonna
you should
sort of catch you on the hop here. I'm interested in Pedro. If we move from Watford to Brighton. So my assumption, I thought, because of the money spent, that he would be sort of replace Welbeck and be the central striker. But a lot of other people have said that That might not be his role. He might be more in a sort of number 10 or winger role. But I don't know how much you know about Pedro from his Watford time.
We've done a scout report actually. Mark tackled this for the site, so I'd point everybody in that direction. Just looking at his appearances now for Watford last season, he did play across the front line again, partly on the left, sort of second striker role as well. But he has spent quite a lot of time centrally. And he was a forward previously for when his last stint in FPL. So they might stick him as a forward, even though I don't necessarily think that's where he'll play. I think even I saw a quote from that scout report saying he's best playing off a central striker. Right. He's not a line leading man like Ferguson's got potentially. Welbeck's got the graft, I think, to do that. But I don't think Pedro's that type of player.
Okay.
And De Zerbi typically plays in a 4-2-3-1 or system like that. So I would think he's more likely to be a number 10 or a
that's what
inside forward. Yeah,
people who are more familiar with him have said. And the reason I ask that is because Brighton, like Brentford, they start off well. They're good fixtures.
Yeah,
there's going to be some price hikes for their players. Matoma's going to get a price hike, and so on. So you're sort of looking for value, and it could be that Pedro could be the one, but I think if he's listed as a forward and he doesn't play there, I think a lot of his owners, I can see a price fall for him because a lot of his owners might be annoyed because he's perhaps getting more assists than not the goals there. So I mean, it's interesting.
He's never been prolific actually. When you look at his scoring record, he's not really. I think it was 11 goals last season in the Championship. So. Not like a Mitrovic type or even a Solanke who's come up from the second tier with a big goals hole behind them. So I don't think he'd be playing up top.
No, I think De Zerbi will be looking to have him as a sort of can play in a variety of places. I'll move on because people are wondering why we're talking about Pedro for ages. But I was just interested because he's going to be a new player there. Lots of other players because possible changes. Richarlison amongst them, down as a forward. Harry Kane is there. Harry Kane, as far as we know, will still be there. If Harry Kane is still there, Richarlison can't be a forward because they only have one forward, whoever plays every match.
Well, this is a bit like Vissa in that if Kane goes, then they would have to overrule what happened last season. And second guess Richarlison playing up top, which he might. But based on last season's criteria, he was almost entirely on the right or left of the Spurs attack. Very rarely did Kane not play. In those appearances were restricted to even in Europe, Kane was playing quite a lot. So he should be a midfielder. Based on that, the only obvious one I had down as a definite, is a player that other people mentioned. That was Lewis Hall at Chelsea. Going from a midfielder to defender. He's actually a midfielder by trade. He learned as a midfielder in the academy, but has been playing as a left back or left wing back. So you would think he'd move to a defender.
Right, and we mentioned briefly when we were talking about player prices, we mentioned Everton players because I mean they're still a team in flux, and they'll probably have to go into the season with what they got, maybe one or two more. But that could be the likes of, say, Gray, for example, was periods of the last couple of years at Everton has been pretty good, a pretty good player. But he probably going to be moved to a forward, isn't he?
I don't know. I think now we're getting to the realms of possibly rather than likely.
Okay.
So if you're looking at just what Dyche used him as. And he came, I think he arrived in Gameweek 22, Dyche's first match. The Gray was 80% of the time used as a central striker. Part of the reason for that was because Calvert-Lewin was injured, of course, and what they else had in reserve, Maupay and Ellis Sims, the young kid, Dyche used him through the middle, Demarai Gray. So based on that, then you would expect to be a forward. But then they would have to disregard what happened before then. So under Lampard, he was mostly on the wing. So he's still got more appearances as a winger last season than he did up top. So that's why I'm a little bit uncertain whether they put weight on the Dyche era than the Lampard one, or if they just look at it as a whole. in which case he's probably going to stay as a midfielder.
Aston Villa are potentially interesting. I mean, they've only really got one striker now that Ings has left. It's Ollie Watkins. I think Archer, I think, has been on loan to
Yeah,
Middlesbrough, I want to
Middlesbrough.
say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So assuming he'll be back because they need another striker. But it could be that some of their midfielders become forwards. So they've been played as a sort of support striker type role. Yeah, likes of Buendia, Liam Bailey, would they move from midfield?
Yeah, I think this is still in long shot territory. I think this is
Okay.
still pretty unlikely, but it's possible. I mean, if you look at Villa's formation since Emery took over, it has been a 4-4-2, or with narrow wingers. Not quite a 4-4-2 on paper as you'd expected in the olden days, but and part of that has been Watkins playing alongside a midfielder really, who's supported him in attack as a second striker. So that's
Okay.
Buendia some of the time. It's been Bailey.
Hmm.
McGinn played there once as well, but it's generally been Buendia and Bailey.
Okay.
Again, a bit like Gray, really. They've still got more appearances last season as midfielders, so
Yeah.
that might be a welcome start for FPL Towers. They might just avoid the difficult decision and just say, well,
Okay.
look, they made more appearances as a midfielder, so
Yeah.
we'll leave them as they are. But it's an interesting debate we had next summer. Maybe if they continue like that, I do think Villa will have to sign someone else
Yeah.
as to complement, especially if they're playing in Europe now, to at least provide backup to Watkins and possibly play alongside him. But they have been almost playing up top, slightly withdrawn off Watkins, but
Okay.
pretty much alongside him for half a season.
And there are some more as well players that are in that sort of probably won't change, probably
Yeah,
unlikely to change.
almost definitely. Yeah,
I mean, Pascal Gross is one at Brighton. I mean, he's very versatile. He can play pretty much anywhere in a team, and he has been used a lot as a right back. But that has been sort of filling in for people. He's been sort of filling in.
yeah,
There's always someone to fill in, so he's always going to
yeah.
play. But he could be of interest next season because with McAllister gone, he is next in line penalties. And if they don't give it to one
Yeah.
of the forwards, it's going to be Pascal Gross on penalties.
Or Stupinan as well, who took penalties for Ecuador.
It did. He did. He
So
scored against
yeah,
Australia, I
yeah.
believe, and he scored. From not from the spot, but has scored for Brighton as well. Pascal Gross, will he be moved to a I mean, will we get a Graham Alexander?
No, we won't. I'm almost certain we won't. He actually only played I think 9 games as a right back. It seemed like more, didn't it? It seemed like he was there every week.
Yeah.
But, yeah, way more appearances as a midfielder. So he'll stay as that, I'm sure. There's a few other players like that who are filling in. First one comes to mind, of course. Maybe
Yeah.
ruining your link here,
Yeah.
Joe, but
Yeah.
Alexander Isak
Yes.
was the prevailing memory of him will be as a left winger for many
Yeah.
FPL managers, and we would think, oh, he spent loads of time on the flank. He actually didn't. He spent way more time playing as a central striker
Okay.
in his first season at Newcastle. There was that 6 or 7 game stretch where he was up in the left, but most of the time he was playing through the middle. And he'll be a forward again next season, and I think we'll see a reversion of the shared pitch time. There'll be games where they do start together, but there'll be few and far between because we've got the Champions League.
Yeah.
I think one will be playing Premier League, one will be playing Champions League.
Yeah.
And we'll bolster our options on the wings and in the field to avoid that.
I think a lot of people from last season. It's one of the pivotal moments, wasn't it? With you have a choice: get Isak or Wilson for Newcastle's double, and I obviously got Isak, who did nothing, and those who got Wilson would have got dozens of points just in one week. But nevertheless, that will cloud people's judgment. So people will think, "Oh, left wing, I'm not going to bother." But as you said, he is basically he will be the forward, and they will have much more matches. They will have more matches. They will have Europe as well. As a Newcastle fan, what is your instinct as to who will play domestically and who will play in European matches?
I don't know. I'll be honest, it's still a bit of living in denial that it's actually happened that we'll be in the Champions League next season. But I think there'll be more of a job share. I think there'll be a division of labour between the two strikers. I don't think there'll be necessarily one playing in Europe and one at home. There might be one suited to a certain opposition. As Howe said before, he's picked Wilson against teams he's got a good track record against. West Ham was one. So I think there'll be more of that. It just depends who else we bring in. I think to start the season with, as with every club, I won't be considering that in my FPL selection until game week 5 or 6, which is
Yeah.
when the Champions League kicks in.
Yeah.
For the first month, rotation is not going to be a problem anywhere
No.
really. Which is why he'll be, Brighton or appealing for the first 3 games because
Okay.
the fixtures are good, and De Zerbi's not going to rotate that much.
Okay.
He will
Yeah.
as soon as Europe starts, and
Um,
that's when you need to be paying attention.
Another player that has moved positions in games and has also been a bit of a bit part player at times to share minutes is Alvarez, World Cup winner, but he's behind a certain Erling Haaland, so that's going to be tough for him to get in that central striker role. But he has basically filled in for Haaland whenever Haaland's not available. That's been his main role, even though I have seen him a lot in a sort of support striker role.
Yes, starts actually. He's actually had more as a like a De Bruyne figure, so like a number
Okay.
8 or a 10 in that system where they play that the 2-3-5 whatever it is now, and the Gundogan and De Bruyne push up.
Yeah.
Alvarez has often played that De Bruyne role in the starting 11. The only thing is he hasn't had many starts, and when he has come on as a substitute, it tends to be for Haaland. So factoring in just starts, then it's 50-50 ish. But if you include in substitute appearances, which they surely will, then he's mainly been Haaland relief, and I'm sure he'll be a forward again next season.
Okay, over the years, there's been various tactical shifts. I mean, obviously away from two strikers, often three up front. More teams playing wing backs, for example. That's something we've seen over the last decade or so. But we had a new invention. Not that new for those who follow football. Inverted fullbacks. So you've got these fullbacks, and they're suddenly in midfield. And we've seen that with Trent Alexander-Arnold has been sensational for club and country. I mean, his pass from that role for Saka's goal for England last night. For those that saw it, amazing. But yeah, so Alexander-Arnold, John Stones, Zinchenko at Arsenal as well. They're doing it. Down as defenders, they're basically midfielders. What is FPL going to do with these guys?
I think they'll leave them as defenders. I think there's a debate to be had if this continues next season as well. It depends how as I said right at the start of this, team sheet is very important in FPL in terms of positional classifications. So it's how you set that team sheet up. Do you set Liverpool up in a 4-3-3?
No.
And then Alexander Arnold's right back? Or do you set them up in a 2 or 3-2-5 as they play on the ball?
Yeah.
And then Alexander Arnold is a midfielder. So this is a bit of a dilemma for FPL, I think, longer term. I think their get out this year is that it's only a formation Klopp turned to in the final 8 or 9 games. And Alexander Arnold has still played the bulk of last season as an orthodox right back, even if he was very attacking. So I think he'll stay as a defender. But another year of this, then they'll have to have a serious think about what to do, because City, Arsenal, Liverpool, the 3 teams we're talking about here, they all play with inverted fullbacks. They spend so much time in possession that he's going to be more there than not. He's not. He retreats to a right back role when he's out of possession, but they're on the ball for 60-70% of the game. So yeah, it's a tricky one. I think they'll stay as defenders this season, but I mean, Stones has done again a bit like Alexander Arnold. He's part of the season he's played there, but the other half he's been either a normal right back or a centre half. Zinchenko is, I suppose, the exception to this, because Arteta's played this system all season to an extent. I don't think Zinchenko inverts. It's not as obvious because he doesn't have the same attacking thrust as Alexander Arnold does, so you don't see it as much.
No,
but he has done it all season. So he's the sort of guinea pig, I suppose, because he has played in that inverted fullback role all season. So if one was to change, it would be him.
Okay. So it sounds like for this year, the likely scenario is they're going to just stay. John Stone's still going to be a defender. I think so. Yeah. Alexander still a defender. Zinchenko still a defender. But I mean, looking at that for the following season after that. So we're real crystal ball gazing for the following season after next. The game should be adapting. I mean, as it has had to with wing backs, for example. I mean, that was when I first started. I can't think of many teams that played with that. But then it just became, teams like, say, I think Chelsea were one of the most prolific of doing that. They were terrible, and then I think it was game week 7 or 8. They played Hull, I want to say, someone, or Huddersfield, one of those teams, and they switched to wing back. And suddenly Alonso was incredible. Suddenly their wing backs were amazing, and suddenly Chelsea were much better. And so many other teams have tried that mentality. But yeah, but that's led to another position change as well, because there was arguments. I remember with, was it Victor Moses at Chelsea? Was
as a blast from the past.
I think he was down as a midfielder, but he was a wing back. So there was a lot of talk. Oh, go on, make him a defender, make him a defender.
Yeah.
But that was the thing about the role of the wing back. Are they actually a midfielder or are they a defender? It's the current system doesn't quite take that into account. Although you've said that wing backs are considered defenders. So Victor Moses in defence, please.
Yeah, there's probably been less chat about it this season than there has. Yeah. More summers on the site, there should be a radical overhaul of the positions. Yeah. I've actually not seen as much of it this year. I don't know why. Maybe people have just accepted that that's not going to change now. Yeah. Longer term, you would think they would have to adapt, but I think part of the reason FPL is so successful is that it prides itself on its easiness to pick up on.
Yeah, you don't want it to be too complicated.
4 positions, and if you start breaking it down into attack midfielders, defensive midfielders, you got to have one from each, and then it becomes less pick up and play. Yeah. So longer term, there's more debate to be had, especially about the inverted fullbacks. But they likes to keep it simple, do the FPL towers.
Okay, so we covered a lot of players there. I mean, how many will we get right? How many wrong? Will FPL not move them or do move them? Did we miss anyone out? Do leave those views in the chat below. Do leave your comments there. Who you think and why certain players should move. But for now, Neale, thanks so much for joining me. It's been fascinating to chat about player positions and get the gist of what FPL may or may not do with them. It's always going to be of interest for us. But do remember to like the video if you enjoyed the content. Do obviously remember to subscribe to keep up to date with all our latest videos and podcasts. But for now, Neale, take care. Good luck with the season. Good luck with the nice and easy writing that you've got coming up before the chaos starts at some point in August. But take care, Neale. See you soon.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.